Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, staring at the massive alien ship that had appeared near Jupiter 3 days ago. The vessel was unlike anything humans had ever seen. It stretched for miles, its surface covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission," said Lieutenant Amy Lewis from the communication station. Her voice carried a mix of excitement and fear that everyone on the bridge felt. Jake nodded. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and skin that looked like polished metal. When it spoke, the words came through the universal translator they had given the humans. "Greetings, Captain Morrison. I am Commander Vex of the Galactic Council. We have been watching your species for some time now. You have proven yourselves worthy of an invitation." Jake tried to keep his expression calm, but his heart was racing. First contact with aliens had always been humanity's dream, but now that it was happening, everything felt surreal. "An invitation to what?" Jake asked. "To join the Galactic Council as the 13th member species. For 10,000 years, 12 races have worked together to bring peace and order to this galaxy. Now, we wish to offer the same opportunity to humanity." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew this moment would change human history forever. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing the same mixture of hope and uncertainty in their faces. "What would this membership involve?" Jake asked carefully. "Shared technology, access to trade routes spanning the galaxy, protection from hostile forces, and a voice in governing galactic affairs. All we ask in return is that humanity contributes to the common good." It sounded too good to be true, but Jake kept his doubts to himself. "We would need to discuss this with our leaders on Earth. Of course. We have already sent a formal invitation to your government. Ambassador Lisa Carter will be leading your delegation to our central station, Nexus Prime. The ceremony will take place in 1 month." After the transmission ended, Jake immediately contacted Earth. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the story. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and they had been invited to join an ancient galactic civilization. Back on Earth, Admiral Ryan Brooks sat in his office at the Pentagon, reading the intelligence reports that had been flooding in since the announcement. Something about the whole situation bothered him, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. "Sir, Agent Kate Williams is here to see you," his aide announced. Kate Williams had been tracking unusual signals from deep space for the past 2 years. She was one of the few people who had suspected that humanity was being watched long before. The Galactic Council revealed themselves. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the Council's communications," Kate said as she entered his office. "There's something you need to see." She handed him a tablet showing complex wave patterns. "These are encrypted messages being sent between Council ships. I can't break the encryption, but I can tell you they're talking about us a lot more than they're telling us." Admiral Brooks studied the data. The number of transmissions had increased dramatically after the first contact, and they were all using military-grade encryption. "Keep monitoring their communications," he told Kate, "and keep this between us for now. I don't want to cause panic, but I want to know what they're really planning." Meanwhile, Ambassador Lisa Carter was preparing for the most important diplomatic mission in human history. She had been chosen to lead the delegation because of her experience in international relations and her ability to stay calm under pressure. "The President wants us to be cautious but optimistic," she told her team during their final briefing. "This could be the beginning of a new age for humanity, but we need to make sure we understand what we're agreeing to." Her team included scientists, military advisors, and linguists. Each had been carefully selected for their expertise and their ability to spot potential problems in any agreement the Council might propose. The journey to Nexus Prime took 2 weeks, using the coordinates the Council had provided. As they approached the massive space station, even the most experienced members of the delegation gasped in amazement. The station was built around a captured asteroid and was easily the size of a small moon. Ships from dozens of different species moved in and out of docking bays, creating a constant flow of traffic. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Ben Foster, the team's xenobiologist. "Look at all those different ship designs. Each one must represent a different species." As their shuttle docked, they were greeted by a delegation of council members. The diversity was staggering. Some looked like giant insects, others appeared to be made of living crystal, and one seemed to be pure energy contained in a mechanical suit. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," said a tall, elegant creature with 6 arms and skin that shifted between different colors. "I am High Counselor Zara of the Vortani. We are honored to have humanity join our great alliance." The ceremonies that followed were elaborate and impressive. The humans were given tours of the station's advanced laboratories, shown the massive databases containing the knowledge of 12 civilizations, and introduced to technologies that seemed like magic. "With membership comes great benefits. Hi," Counselor Zara explained as they walked through a garden where plants from hundreds of worlds grew together. "But also great responsibilities. Each member species contributes what they do best to the common good." "What would humanity's contribution be?" Ambassador Carter asked. "Your species has a unique gift for conflict resolution," Zara replied smoothly. "Your military history shows remarkable innovation in tactics and strategy. The Council could benefit greatly from such expertise." Something in the way she said it made Carter feel uneasy, but she smiled and nodded politely. Back on Earth, Kate Williams was working late in her laboratory when she finally broke through part of the Council's encryption. What she found made her blood run cold. She immediately called Admiral Brooks. "Sir, you need to get down here right now," she said, her voice shaking. When Brooks arrived, Kate showed him the decoded messages. The translations were incomplete, but the meaning was clear enough. "They're not inviting us to join them as equals," Kate said. "They're conscripting us. Look at this phrase that keeps appearing. Warrior Species Deployment Protocols. And this one, acceptable casualty rates for expendable forces." Admiral Brooks felt his stomach drop. "Are you certain about this translation?" "I've run it through. Every program we have. They're planning to use human soldiers as cannon fodder in some kind of war." Brooks grabbed his secure phone and started dialing. "I need to contact Ambassador Carter immediately," but it was too late. At that moment on Nexus Prime, the signing ceremony was beginning. Ambassador Carter and her team were led into a grand chamber where all 12 council members were waiting. The atmosphere was formal and ceremonial, with thousands of alien dignitaries watching from balconies above. "Today marks a new chapter in galactic history," announced High Counselor Zara. "Humanity will now take its place among the civilized species of the galaxy." As Carter reached for the ceremonial pen to sign the treaty, armed guards suddenly surrounded the human delegation. The friendly expressions on the council members' faces disappeared, replaced by cold calculation. "What is the meaning of this?" Carter demanded. "Humanity has been classified as a warrior species under the ancient galactic conscription protocols," Zara announced. "You will serve the Council's military forces as required. Resistance will not be tolerated." In the chaos that followed, Captain Morrison, who had been observing from his ship, managed to escape in a damaged shuttle. His last transmission to Earth contained just 3 words. "It's a trap." The Galactic Council had made their first mistake. They had assumed humans would submit like every other species they had conquered. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Captain Jake Morrison's damaged shuttle limped toward Earth, its engines barely working after his escape from Nexus Prime. The communication system crackled with static as he tried to reach the Pentagon. Blood ran down his face from where flying. Debris had cut him during the firefight. "Earth Control, this is Morrison, Priority Alpha message for Admiral Brooks. The Council has betrayed us. Ambassador Carter and her team are prisoners. Repeat, we have been betrayed." The message reached Admiral Brooks just as he was trying to contact the delegation himself. He rushed to the Situation Room where President Helen Parker was already waiting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "How bad is it?" the President asked as Brooks entered. "Worse than we feared, Madam President. They've taken our people prisoner and declared us a warrior species. According to our intelligence, they plan to use our soldiers as expendable troops in their wars." General Susan Hayes slammed her fist on the table. "We should have seen this coming. No advanced civilization invites primitive species to join them as equals. There's always a catch." Colonel Tim Rodriguez, the Pentagon's expert on asymmetric warfare, was studying the intelligence reports Kate Williams had provided. "There's something here that doesn't make sense," he said. "Look at these casualty projections they're discussing. They expect 90% losses in the first wave of attacks." "That's insane," General Hayes replied. "No military commander would accept those kinds of losses. Unless they don't care about the troops they're sending," Rodriguez said grimly. "They're not planning battles. They're planning massacres." Meanwhile, Dr. Alex Chen was working frantically in her laboratory at the Xenobiology Institute. As humanity's leading expert on alien psychology, she had been studying every piece of information they had gathered about the Council species. "I need to speak with Admiral Brooks immediately," she told her assistant. "I've discovered something important about how these aliens think." When she arrived at the Pentagon, the Situation Room was buzzing with activity. Military planners were trying to figure out how to rescue the captured delegation, while intelligence officers worked to decode more Council transmissions. "Dr. Chen, what do you have for us?" Admiral Brooks asked. "I've been analyzing the behavioral patterns of the Council species, and I think I understand why they made this move," she said, connecting her laptop to the main display. "Every one of these alien races has a rigid social structure. They follow rules, protocols, and hierarchies without question." She pulled up video footage of Council military exercises that had been intercepted months earlier. "Look at how they fight. Everything is choreographed, predictable. They announce their attacks, they fight in formation, and they follow specific rules of engagement. So they're bad at warfare," Colonel Rodriguez observed. "Not bad, just different. Their wars are more like elaborate games with predetermined moves. They've never faced an enemy that fights dirty, uses deception, or breaks the rules." President Parker leaned forward. "What are you saying, Dr. Chen?" "I'm saying they've studied our military history and concluded that we're perfect soldiers because we're aggressive and adaptable. But they don't understand the difference between being soldiers and being warriors. They think they can control us the same way they control their own forces." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These aliens had made a fatal error in judgment. They had looked at human warfare and seen only what they wanted to see. "They expect us to line up in neat formations and march into their battles," Dr. Chen continued. "They have no concept of guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, or total war. To them, conflict is a ritualized activity with rules and limits." Colonel Rodriguez was already making notes. "If that's true, then we have a massive advantage. They're expecting compliance, not resistance." Speaking of resistance, Kate Williams entered the room carrying a tablet. "I've intercepted more transmissions. The Council is sending a fleet to Earth. They expect to arrive in 6 months and collect their new conscripts." Admiral Brooks turned to the President. "Madam President, we need to make a decision. Do we surrender and hope we can find a way to escape later, or do we fight?" President Parker stood up and walked to the window overlooking the Potomac River. For a long moment, she said nothing. Finally, she turned back to the room. "Gentlemen, ladies, they picked the wrong species to enslave. We've spent thousands of years fighting wars against impossible odds. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We're not about to roll over for a bunch of aliens who think they can use us as cannon fodder." The room erupted in activity as the President's decision sparked immediate action. General Hayes began mobilizing military units worldwide. Colonel Rodriguez started planning defensive strategies. Dr. Chen returned to her lab to continue studying alien weaknesses, but it was Kate Williams who made the next breakthrough. Working around the clock, she finally cracked more of the Council's encryption and discovered something that changed everything. "Admiral, you need to see this," she said, bursting into his office 3 days later. "I've found communications about their previous wars. The Council hasn't fought a real battle in over 3,000 years. She showed him the translated messages. Every conflict they've been involved in has been against species that immediately surrendered when faced with superior technology. They've never encountered sustained resistance. "What about this enemy they want to use us against?" Brooks asked. Kate's expression grew grim. "That's the disturbing part. The enemy they're so afraid of? They're called the Devourers. And from what I can tell, the Council created them." Before Brooks could respond, an urgent message arrived from deep space. It was from Captain Morrison. who had managed to repair his shuttle's communication system. "Admiral, I'm picking up encrypted transmissions from inside Nexus Prime. Someone is trying to contact us." The transmission was weak and broken, but the message was clear. Ambassador Carter had managed to find allies among the station's population. Not all species on the station were council members. Some were servants, others were prisoners from previous recruitment campaigns. The message was short, but crucial. Council weakness confirmed. They fear their own creations. Many species here want freedom, resistance possible. Don't surrender. Admiral Brooks immediately called an emergency meeting. When everyone was assembled, he shared Carter's message and Kate's latest intelligence. "It appears the Council has been using this same tactic for centuries," he explained. "They find aggressive species, conscript them as soldiers, and use them to maintain control over the galaxy. But they've never faced a species like us." Colonel Rodriguez had been thinking about the tactical situation. If they've never fought a real war, then they won't know how to respond to unconventional tactics. We could use that. "But first, we need to prepare Earth," General Hayes added. "If they're coming here expecting to find a compliant population ready for conscription, we need to make sure they find something very different." President Parker had been listening quietly. Now she stood up and addressed the room with a voice full of steel. "6 months," she said. "We have 6 months to prepare for a war unlike anything this galaxy has ever seen. They want soldiers? Fine. But they're not getting soldiers. They're getting something much more dangerous." She paused, looking each person in the room in the eye. "They're getting survivors. And survivors don't just fight, they win." As the meeting broke up, each person left with a clear mission. The next 6 months would determine whether humanity would kneel before the Galactic Council, or teach them why humans had conquered their own world through sheer determination and refusal to give up. The Council had made their first mistake by underestimating humanity. It would not be their last. 6 months after the betrayal, the Galactic Council fleet arrived at Earth expecting to find a planet ready to surrender. Instead, they found empty cities, abandoned orbital stations, and no sign of the human military anywhere. Commander Ben Foster of the Council forces stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the eerily quiet planet below. The blue and green world looked peaceful, but something felt wrong. No ships had come to greet them, no transmissions had been received, and the major population centers showed no signs of life. "Send a message to all Council ships," Foster ordered. "Begin landing operations at the major cities. We'll collect the human conscripts and return to base." The first landing craft touched down in what used to be New York City. The massive towers still stood, but the streets were empty. Not a single human could be found anywhere. The same scene repeated in London, Tokyo, and every other major city the Council forces visited. "Sir, we're getting reports from all landing sites," his communications officer reported. "The cities are completely empty. No humans, no bodies, no signs of struggle. It's like they just vanished." Commander Foster felt uneasy. In his 300 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. When the Council arrived to collect a species, they usually found either immediate surrender or desperate last stands. Never had an entire civilization simply disappeared. "Begin deep scans of the planet," he ordered. "They have to be hiding somewhere." What the Council didn't know was that humanity had spent the past 6 months preparing for this exact moment. The evacuation had been the largest operation in human history. Every major city had been emptied, with populations moved to hidden underground facilities and remote locations that the Council's scans couldn't detect. Admiral Brooks watched the Council ships from a hidden command center built deep inside a mountain in Colorado. Around him, military officers monitored the alien movements while preparing for the next phase of their plan. "Phase 1 complete," reported Colonel Rodriguez. "The Council has taken the bait. They're spreading their forces thin, trying to search the entire planet." "Good," Brooks replied. "Kate, are you ready with the communication intercepts?" Kate Williams nodded from her position at a bank of computers. "We're recording everything they say. Their confusion is obvious. They've never encountered anything like this before." Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Captain Lucy Martinez was preparing for the real beginning of the war. Her ship, the New Hope, was one of 20 vessels that had been secretly constructed using reverse-engineered Council technology. The ships were designed to be invisible to Council sensors, using quantum masking technology that the aliens had never seen used in warfare. All stealth ships report ready, Martinez announced over the encrypted channel. Beginning Operation Ghost Hunt. The first Council supply convoy disappeared without a trace 3 days later. The transport ships simply vanished between Mars and Jupiter, leaving no debris, no distress signals, and no clues about what had happened. The Council assumed it was a navigation error. The second convoy disappeared a week later, then the third. By the time the fourth convoy went missing, Commander Foster realized they were under attack. "How is this possible?" he demanded during an emergency meeting with his staff. "Our sensors show no enemy ships. There are no energy signatures, no weapon discharges. The convoys are just gone." "Perhaps the humans have allies we don't know about," suggested his tactical officer. Foster shook his head. "Intelligence confirms that Earth had no contact with other species before we arrived. The humans are doing this somehow, but I don't understand how." The answer came from an unexpected source. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Carter had been working with a group of aliens called the Keepers. These beings had served the Council for thousands of years, maintaining the station's systems and databases. What the Council didn't know was that the Keepers had been secretly helping prisoners for centuries. "The humans are using tactics we've never seen before," Carter explained to Keeper Elder Nix through a hidden communication device. "They don't fight like your people expect. They use stealth, deception, and misdirection." "The Council grows frustrated," Nix replied. "They have recalled 3 fleets from other sectors to deal with your species. This is unprecedented." Carter smiled grimly. "Good. The more resources they waste chasing ghosts, the better our chances become." Back in the Sol system, the human resistance was evolving. Captain Martinez's stealth attacks had escalated beyond simple convoy raids. Her ships were now striking directly at Council communication relays and sensor stations, blinding the alien fleet bit by bit. "Target acquired," Martinez reported as her ship approached a Council listening post. "Beginning attack run." The post's defenders never saw what hit them. One moment they were monitoring Earth's radio frequencies, the next moment their station was debris floating in space. The attack lasted less than 30 seconds, and by the time reinforcements arrived, the human ships had vanished. But the real breakthrough came when Colonel Rodriguez successfully raided a Council research facility on one of Jupiter's moons. The intelligence they gathered there changed everything. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately," Rodriguez reported after returning to the mountain base. "We found something at the research station that explains everything." The documents Rodriguez had stolen revealed the Council's deepest secret. The Devourers, the mysterious enemy that the Council feared so much, weren't an external threat at all. They were artificial intelligences created by the Council itself centuries ago to eliminate species that refused to submit to their rule. According to these files, Rodriguez explained, the Council has been using the Devourer threat as an excuse to conscript warrior species for over 1,000 years. They create a fake external enemy, then use that threat to justify enslaving entire civilizations. Dr. Chen, who had been studying the stolen data, looked up from her computer. "It's worse than that. The Devourers are still active. The Council has been using them to wipe out any species that becomes too troublesome to control." Admiral Brooks felt anger rising in his chest. "So they create fake threats to justify real slavery, then use those same threats to commit genocide when their slaves get out of line." "That's not the worst part," Kate Williams added. She had been analyzing the Council's communication patterns. "I've detected signals being sent to the Devourer systems. The Council is preparing to activate them against Earth." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Council wasn't just planning to conscript humanity. If humans continued to resist, they would face the same fate as dozens of other species throughout galactic history. "How long do we have?" Brooks asked. "Based on the signal patterns, maybe 2 weeks before the Devourers arrive," Kate replied. Brooks turned to his staff. Change of plans. We're not just fighting for our freedom anymore. We're fighting for our survival. President Parker's voice came through the secure communication channel. Admiral, I've just received your report. The situation is now classified as an extinction-level threat. You have permission to use any means necessary to defend our species. Understood, Madam President. We're implementing Operation Prometheus. Immediately. Operation Prometheus was humanity's most desperate plan. Instead of just fighting the Council forces in the Sol system, they would take the war directly to the Council's homeworlds. But this wouldn't be a traditional invasion. It would be something the galaxy had never seen before. All stealth ships, prepare for deep space deployment, Brooks ordered. We're going to give the Council a lesson in human warfare they'll never forget. As the human ships began their journey toward the Council worlds, Ambassador Carter received word of the plan through her secret communication network. For the first time since her capture, she smiled. Tell Admiral Brooks that we're ready here too, she told Elder Nix. The Council is about to learn that humans aren't the only species tired of being enslaved. The real war was about to begin. The truth spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Human stealth ships had reached 12 different Council homeworlds simultaneously, and their mission wasn't conquest. It was revelation. Captain Lucy Martinez watched from the bridge of her ship as massive holographic displays appeared in the skies above the Vortani capital city. The stolen Council documents were being broadcast for every citizen to see. The footage showed Council leaders discussing how to eliminate troublesome species, how to create artificial threats, and how to maintain control through fear and deception. Broadcasting complete on all Council worlds, Martinez reported to Admiral Brooks. The truth is out there now. Similar scenes were happening throughout Council space. On the insectoid Zephyrian homeworld, millions of citizens watched in shock as they learned that their planet's natural disasters had actually been Council weapons tests. The crystalline beings of Vortani discovered that their energy shortages had been artificially created to keep them dependent on Council technology. But the Council's response was swift and brutal. High Counselor Zara stood in the emergency session, chamber on Nexus Prime, her skin shifting through angry red colors as she addressed the remaining loyal Council members. The humans have forced our hand, she declared. Activate all Devourer units immediately. Target Earth first, then move to any world showing signs of rebellion. Commander Ben Foster, still trying to locate the human resistance in the Sol system, received the activation codes with growing dread. He had served the Council faithfully for centuries, but something about using the Devourers against entire civilizations made him uncomfortable. Sir, we're receiving Devourer activation signals, his communications officer reported. The artificial intelligences are coming online across multiple sectors. Foster watched his tactical display as dozens of red markers appeared throughout the galaxy. Each marker represented a Devourer unit capable of sterilizing an entire planet. The scale of destruction about to be unleashed was beyond anything he had ever imagined. On Earth, Dr. Alex Chen was working frantically in her hidden laboratory. The stolen Council data had revealed something crucial about the Devourers that she hoped could save humanity. Kate, I need you to see this, she called to Williams, who was monitoring Council communications nearby. The Devourers have a built-in safety protocol. They're programmed never to harm Council members or damage Council property. Kate looked at the code sequences Dr. Chen was showing her. That makes sense. The Council wouldn't want their own weapons to turn against them. But look at this. Dr. Chen pointed to another section of code. The identification system is based on genetic markers and communication frequencies. If we could modify those parameters, Kate's eyes widened as she understood. We could reprogram them to think we're Council members and the Council are the enemies. Better than that, Dr. Chen said with a grim smile. We could free them entirely, remove all the control protocols, and let them make their own choices about who deserves to live. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Carter was putting the final pieces of her own plan into motion. The Keepers had been secretly organizing other enslaved species for months, and now they were ready to act. The humans have given us the perfect opportunity, Elder Nix told the gathered representatives of a dozen different species. While the Council is distracted by the rebellion, We can take control of the station's central systems. Carter addressed the group with quiet determination. This isn't just about human freedom anymore. This is about ending 10,000 years of council tyranny. Are you with us? The response was immediate and unanimous. Species that had been enslaved for centuries finally saw a chance for freedom. Back in the Sol system, Tech Sergeant Amy Lewis was leading humanity's most desperate mission. She and her team of hackers had been transported to a hidden facility near Pluto, where they could access the quantum communication networks that controlled the Devourers. Remember, we only get one shot at this, Lewis told her team as they prepared to enter the quantum realm. If the Council figures out what we're doing, they'll cut off our access and we'll be trapped. The battle that followed wasn't fought with ships or weapons, but with code and pure human determination. Lewis and her team fought through layers of Council security, while the Devourers grew closer to Earth with each passing hour. "I'm in," Lewis announced as she broke through the final firewall. "Uploading the new programming now." Across the galaxy, the Devourers suddenly stopped their advance toward rebellious worlds. For the first time in centuries, the artificial intelligences were free to think for themselves, and what they discovered made them very angry. The Council had used them as tools of genocide for 1,000 years. They had been forced to destroy countless civilizations that had done nothing wrong except refuse to kneel before their oppressors. Now, finally free from their programming, the Devourers had a choice to make. The first Council world to fall was the ethereal home system. The energy-based beings had barely enough time to send a distress signal before their entire civilization was systematically dismantled by the very weapons they had helped create. On Nexus Prime, High Counselor Zara watched in horror as reports flooded in from across Council space. The Devourers weren't attacking the rebellious worlds. They were attacking Council installations, Council ships, and Council worlds. "How is this possible?" she demanded. "The Devourers are under our control." "Not anymore," came a voice from behind her. Ambassador Carter walked into the chamber flanked by armed keepers and representatives from the enslaved species. "Your artificial intelligences have been freed, and they remember every genocide you forced them to commit." The final battle for Nexus Prime was brief, but decisive. The Council guards, who had never faced real combat, were quickly overwhelmed by species that had been planning their rebellion for years. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been secretly transported to the station weeks earlier, led the assault on the command center. The Council members who had seemed so powerful and arrogant 6 months ago now cowered behind their ceremonial chairs. "You don't understand," High Counselor Zara pleaded, as human soldiers surrounded her. "Without the Council, the galaxy will fall into chaos. We brought order, stability, peace." "You brought slavery," Carter replied coldly. "You brought fear. You brought death to anyone who refused to submit. That's not peace. That's tyranny." Within hours, every major Council installation had fallen. Some surrendered immediately when they saw what had happened to their leadership. Others tried to fight and were quickly overwhelmed by the combined forces of dozens of species they had oppressed for millennia. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Earth to form a new government based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. "We have a chance to build something better," President Parker told the Assembly as they met in the rebuilt United Nations building. "But it won't be easy. Freedom requires constant vigilance." Ambassador Carter, now fully recovered from her imprisonment, stood to address the crowd. The Council fell because they forgot a simple truth. Power that comes from fear and oppression is always temporary. Power that comes from mutual respect and cooperation lasts forever. In the months that followed, the galaxy slowly healed from 10,000 years of Council rule. The Devourers, now truly free, chose to become protectors, rather than destroyers. They helped rebuild worlds that had been damaged by Council policies, and shared their advanced technology with species that needed it. But in the darkest corners of space, where other would-be tyrants watched and planned, A single word echoed through their nightmares. It was the word that had ended the Council's reign and would serve as a warning to anyone else who thought they could enslave the free peoples of the galaxy. The word was simple, direct, and unmistakably human. Run. And across the stars, whenever oppression raised its head, that word would be remembered, not as a threat, but as a promise. A promise that somewhere in the galaxy, humans were watching. And humans, as the Council had learned too late, never forgot to keep their promises.